Claire? It's just like Granicus doesn't show. Notice. I just did like that profile. It's like one of those. Well, maybe again. Could be. I can't even move. You're looking at what she has on her computer. See if I go. At like 7:02 or 3 or something like that. Are there any public comments before we get started? Okay, I guess not. So if anybody wants to make comments on these public hearings, they could fill out a card and bring it up to Kelly. So we'll start with the public hearings.
Thank you.
Kelly, is the continuance, is that considered a public hearing? Or do we just have one before I start?
So if anyone is going to, it is considered a public hearing, but you don't need to open it unless there are public comments on that item.
But I can keep things the way they are once I get going.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'll read the statement prior to the public hearings opening. So I guess technically are two public hearings. Yeah, I should bring my glasses. There are two public hearings on land use applications as scheduled tonight. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in the state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which the card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written material received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written material submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to the staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you would disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Okay, for each public hearing, we'll open the record for that file. But I'm going to start by asking, does any commissioner have any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, bias, or any other statement to declare?
I'm going to make a statement on there. I am a licensed real estate broker in Oregon, and in that capacity, I represent buyers and sellers of residential properties, including those in Kenema. In this particular piece of property, my wife and I did represent the seller at the time the applicant purchased it. That I do not see as a conflict of interest because there was no contact with the buyer in regards to buildability or design.
For the record, can you just make a statement on whether you think this affects your ability to make an unbiased decision?
It does not.
Thanks.
We had a presentation by the applicant last week at the Kenema Neighborhood Association. I did not participate in that discussion. And there again, there's no conflict there.
Cool. Okay, has any commissioner visited the site?
Yes.
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 For the record, all 4 commissioners have visited the site. Does anyone in the audience wish to question any of the commissioners about these disclosures? All right, well, regarding PC 19-094 and HR 19-00005, historic review for new construction in the Kenema National Register District on 4th Avenue, I can turn it over to staff. But I will state before that, there will be public testimony. There'll be 15 minutes for the applicant, 5 minutes for representatives of a recognized neighborhood association, government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization, 3 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes for applicants' rebuttal, and we'll hold to that. So, anyway, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Chair McLaughlin. Before I start, I just want to make sure that you all received the public comment that was submitted on Friday from the Kenema Neighborhood Association. I emailed that to you all, and I have a hard copy if anyone needs to look at that, or if any member of the public would like to look at that. We have a hard copy up here. And I have some correspondence also to add to the record from the applicant regarding dimensions and heights of neighboring structures and retaining walls proposed. I will talk about this in my staff report, but I'll also pass these 2 pages to you, and I'll clarify the information in it during my report. So this is GLUA 1927 and HR 1905 for a new single-family home and a detached garage with ADU above in the Kenema National Register District on 4th Avenue. Trying to get our light settings changed, but I'm not sure if...
For mood lighting.
There we go. So the property is a 5,000 square foot lot that is located next to 702 4th Avenue and between Blanchard Street and Apperson, unimproved Apperson Street. The site slopes up from 4th Avenue. And then is relatively flat before sloping up again to the property behind it. The house at 702 4th is an existing contributing historic structure in the district. The lot behind this property was recently approved for a new 2-story or 1.5-story bungalow design home with a detached garage and ADU. And so once you get up the slope from 4th Avenue, this is what the site looks like. And then you can see on the right there is another new construction in Kenema, or relatively new in the past few years. And then if you're standing on 4th and looking up, you can kind of see a set of old stairs going up to the property. And then if you're standing at the top of those stairs, you can see some trees in front of the property as well. And then looking at the historic home, you can see the side of that. And then looking the opposite direction, there are a few trees clustered in the front corner of the property. So there was a shed on the property until December 2018 when it was removed. The applicant didn't request demolition approval of this shed from the HRB, which is technically required for all structures in the historic district, even if they are in this condition and not a primary dwelling. And so I've recommended a condition of approval to apply for historic review of the demolition and then obtain any required building permits if they would have been required, which I think they would have been. It's about a 600 square foot shed. So again, the nearby homes include the A.E. Davis house, which is in the upper left-hand. It's right next to the property. Across the street, the yellow home there is the Draper house. And those are both contributing. And then the home in the lower left corner is at 716 4th. It's a minimal traditional house. It's out of period for the district, so it's not considered to be contributing. So the site plan shown here, we've got the house placed kind of the center or the front of the lot, and then at the detached garage behind. Driveway access would be from an existing neighboring driveway, so it would be shared, and then it would, a new section of driveway would come across a 12-foot wide alley, and then lead into that detached garage. And so looking At the side profile here of the slope, the topography, you can see the garage is slightly, not quite as tall as the house. The proposed, here's the front facade facing 4th Avenue. We've got a vernacular design, 1/1 windows, double hung, hip roof front porch. Roof pitch is proposed as 812, which matches the home next door. The applicant proposes 7-inch lap siding, smooth hardy plank. This design, or very similar to this design, was approved last year on 3rd Avenue. On the site of a home that was, that burned down. And so that the board approved a very similar design just a year ago on a different site. Side and rear elevations here. Then we can refer back to these later if we need to during our discussion. This is a 1.5, it appears to be 1.5 stories. We've got the eave kind of in the 2nd story window area. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at what to consider the house as far as number of stories. So the eave kind of lines up within the window area and not above the windows. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Although if you do look at the interior plan, you know, you've got almost a full height wall here. So here are the floor plans. And then the detached garage with ADU on top. And so because of the elevation change, the back side of that is kind of partially buried. And there is a retaining wall proposed along the back that would, you know, be kind of part of the building here and then extend out on the other, where the kind of asphalt is, or the concrete here. So a couple items, quick items to get through. Along with the shed removal, there were a few trees removed last year. You can see the stumps in these photos. I have a condition of approval to replace the trees in order to preserve tree canopy. So even though these were larger trees, the condition of approval is to replace with a 2-inch caliper tree. But a large size species, so dug for a big leaf maple, western red cedar, you know, something large. I'm in the staff report and the condition, I only mentioned one tree removed, and then since then I realized there were 2. So I'd like to recommend now that we modify the condition to be 2 trees instead of 1. Then we've got a retaining wall in the back along the garage that we just talked about. A portion of the wall is proposed as 7 feet. Now, HRB policies and generally what we would allow is 6 feet tall maximum behind the front of a house. 7 feet is, for a retaining wall, 7 feet is allowed in our normal code. And then in the design guidelines, the actual guideline reads, minimize the height and presence of walls. So this is in the very back of the site. So I think the presence of this wall is minimized. And so it's up to the board to determine whether you think the height is okay in this instance. There is no prohibition on walls over 7 feet. So you're okay to approve this if you think it's compatible and it meets this guideline. Do you have a question?
Yeah, on his email that he sent, it says most of the walls at 5 feet, that the last part of it goes to 7, but they could slope it to 5.
Yeah, so
That's well under the 7 feet. So.
yeah, so that it sounds like that might be an
Based on
option
this.
as well. And so I think maybe that's something that we can ask the applicant to discuss in their presentation, because I'm not quite sure
Gotcha.
as far as the engineering, if that's possible. I mean, it sounds like it is according to the applicant, but
Can I ask?
that's something to discuss. So the main issue with this, I think, in general, the vernacular design is compatible, it's appropriate. I didn't find any major issues with the proportions and design of the house. I think the only issue here is the fact that it's right next to this historic vernacular that's very similar looking and smaller than the proposed house. So in looking at kind of what the impact of this new house would be on the smaller historic home, I looked at the height, the width, and then how close to the street each house is, and then how far apart they are. So you can see here, I labeled the topography, the grade, and so there's going to be a little bit of grading done on this portion of the site, but for the most part, the base elevation of both structures is going to be almost the same. So one's not going to be sitting a whole lot higher than the other. They're going to be built at almost the same elevation. The new home is proposed about 6 feet closer to the street than the historic home. And then the width of the new house is 25 feet, the historic home is 20 feet. The height of the new home is proposed to be 32 feet versus approximately 28 feet for this house. Now, the staff report says 25 feet, and then I had lots of discussions with the applicant and our building department staff about, how tall this house is. We're kind of just eyeballing it. The applicant actually had a laser measurer that I actually went out with the applicant's contractor to see the measurement happen with the laser measurer. So what we determined is that this house is probably around 28 feet is our best guess. So I want to make sure that the final staff report reflects that it's about 28 feet and not 25, which is what I had written originally. So it's about 14% taller.
You're saying the existing house is 20?
Existing house.
This shows it at 29.
So yes, so
29.6.
there's that, but the roof pitch we think is actually 812,
Oh,
which
not
brings that down a little bit.
Got you.
So after that measurement happened, then we went out again and looked at it again and decided it was about 28 feet. So, and then there's approximately 18 feet proposed between the two structures here. So I think that spacing, 18 feet between the two is, that's ample spacing, yes?
I've noticed discrepancy between some of the maps and aerials regarding the property line. The
Right.
picture shows it here going right through the Davis house.
Yes, and that's not correct. So
Okay. The plot plan that you started with here showed, the architect's plot plan showed it, the house entirely on its own property
yes.
there.
So this is a lot
just-
more accurate, and this is about 8
Okay.
feet, I think, here. So I've got a measurement, I believe, right there. So yeah, it's actually almost 9 feet. So sorry, flip it around. Now we're looking at it in the other direction, but it's about 9 feet from the existing home to the property line, and then almost 10 feet from the new home to the property line. So 18 to 19 feet of separation between the two structures. And so I think the spacing is ample, but the combination of a house that's wider, taller, and closer to the street, I think overpowers the Davis home. And so I recommend a condition of approval to bring the house back a little bit and potentially also reduce the height a little bit. And in talking with the applicant, bringing the house back about 3 feet seemed to be doable. And then bringing it down a foot or two also seemed doable. So I'll let the applicant talk about that when they come up a little bit. And then if you do move it back 3 feet, you reduce the spacing in between the house and the garage, but right now there's about 11 feet there, and so there's room to move it back. And then two other minor issues. One, composite decking is proposed on the front porch. Because the house is perched so far above the street, my recommendation would be if we allow it only on the decking on the floor and not on the stairs, and that it be the color chosen or the hue or shade chosen for the composite decking match one of the colors on the house, the trim or the body. And then there is vertical siding proposed underneath the porch. The staff report says that vertical siding isn't typical of Kenema and says has a condition to do something different. However, the applicant pointed out that there's vertical siding on the Davis house next door, right here under their porch, and all the way around the sides of the house as well on the
111.
Underneath. So, in looking at that, it wasn't clear if it was T111. It wasn't clear how, what age it was, if it was original or not. And so, knowing that, that exists, it's probably not original. I am kind of looking for direction from the board as to whether the proposed vertical siding on the new home is appropriate or not. It will be mostly shielded with the landscaping that's required as a condition, and proposed in the plans clearly. So a little bit of board direction on that would be helpful. And so I've got the conditions of approval here with the ones highlighted that we might be modifying, I think. And so we can refer to these as needed during your discussion. And that's all I've got.
Is there any other questions for staff? Okay, well, if we could have the applicant come forward and state your name and the city that you live in. And you've got 15 minutes, but you don't have to take it all.
Chair McLaughlin, hi Kelly. My name's Mark Beerwagon. I'm a general contractor. I built the house next door for Mr. Beislein, the applicant. I live in Happy Valley, Oregon. I wanted to first of all address the shed. Mr. Beislein had removed the shed, and I'm sure he's talked to staff about the shed, but I wanted to share some of the comments that he made to me. The concern was the structural integrity. As you could see from the pictures, it was kind of fallen down, and Mr. Beislein lives in the house, and the house below is where his grandchildren live, so there was a concern about the shed as well as rusty nails. It was full of junk and rat's nests and some other hazards, and he just felt it was important to take it out, and I'd be happy to comply with whatever the board thinks is appropriate to as a condition. Also wanted to note that the stairs that go up the front were apparently actually installed within the last year, although they look old. They're stackable blocks and have been recently installed right before he purchased the property. The intention, and I discussed this with staff when I was on site, the intention is to bring the grade up at the front to match the adjacent grade. It's the Davis house right next door. Matching that grade would bring the front grade up about 2 feet, reducing 2 to 3 steps. Also, more of that, it would shield more of that skirting, less of that would be visible. Also kind of reducing that difference in height that currently exists at 14%. I did note the design guidelines, and I think it talks about 20%, meaning if it's within 20%, then it's an approvable amount in terms of difference. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Also wanted to note that there was, Mr. Beislein only removed one tree. There was actually, when he has pictures from when they originally purchased the property next door, photos of 4 years ago, and that the second stump was a stump at that time, so it was removed some time ago. So we would want to just mitigate with one tree planting. And we can provide those photos if needed. I think, is it appropriate to offer an exhibit?
Sure.
Okay. This is one of the exhibits. This is just the photos of the, do I hand them up there or hand them to you?
Anything.
I think I have enough. Here's another. So this is in reference to house placement. And I draw your attention to 625 and 707, one of the homes that was called out in the staff report. It was the Draper house right across the street, and right next door to the Draper house, 625. I wanted to highlight the fact that there's quite a bit of difference, and 625 is a newer home that was, I don't know when it was approved.
2016?
2016, and there's about 15 feet of difference in the front of those two houses. And you also notice that the detached garage is much closer to 707 than the 18 feet that we're proposing. So our hope is to not lower the house and not move the house back. It would impact the livability of the site in the back as the back porch and the garage come together. Reducing that down would just provide much less living space in the back, and that's the only yard space that this home is going to be a home for a young family. Actually, Mr. Beislein's daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren who live currently in 716 will be moving into this house. And so yard space for the kids is important, and having that separation between the detached garage and the house is important. We're not really in a position to move the garage back. We're really constrained by the site conditions. We've kind of pushed the maximum according to our geotech, our structural, and our civil engineers. Oh, and one other thing I would note that the trees that exist in the front and the tree that we plant for mitigation would obviously also shield the house and the impact that it would have from the street. So that's all I have. If you have questions?
So you're gonna bring the grade up, so you're gonna bring dirt in to raise that front of the house up and then grade it out?
Well, I would say we wouldn't bring dirt in from off-site, but when the house is excavated, we
Right,
would
that dirt,
stockpile.
you're
Yeah,
gonna bring it around and grade it out front.
correct.
I got you. And that wall in the back, you can go to 5 feet, but it would still be an engineered wall, correct?
It'd still be an engineered wall. I think we could get it to 5 feet. You know, when those things are drawn, they're always,
Yeah.
the structural guy and the architect are using topo and so they, but when we get out to the site and are addressing the site condition, it would be
Yeah, it'll definitely.
likely that we could grade that and bring that down, at least certainly down 6 inches to comply with the maximum
Sure,
allowed
I
height.
could, got it. Does anybody have any questions?
And you said the difference in height or width that's allowable is plus or minus 20%. That's,
So the design guidelines, you know, we have kind of recommended and then prohibited. And under prohibited, it says houses that are greater than, more than 20% greater than the typical height in Kenema, in the district.
and what does recommended say?
You know, I can pull that up and read it to you verbatim, but I think in general it talks about homes being, or new buildings being in keeping with the typical heights of the district. So there's
Right.
nothing.
But 20% maybe with the neighborhood.
It's, yeah, so it
Because
doesn't, it doesn't mention houses next door. It talks about within the district. And so in the staff report, I talk about other vernacular homes in the district that are on the taller side. There are some that are a couple of them that I found that I think are close to 30 feet. And then the rest seem to be around 24, 25. So,
That's a little innocuous. I mean, you're taking it very broad,
yeah.
and I'm looking at, well, it certainly meets that criteria with the next
Yeah.
door house.
Right,
within
so it's
20%.
not more than 20% taller than the house next door, or I think that typical of the district, you know, vernaculars, I don't think that this house exceeds that 20%.
No,
You know, we're not in that realm at all.
yeah, gotcha.
No other questions?
No other questions? Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Do we get any public comments? Or is there anybody from a neighborhood association that's actual representative that represents the neighborhood?
That would be the applicant. Izzard.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then Paul Edgar, if you want to come forward, you got 3 minutes.
I'm representing Friends of Kenema, a 501c and authorized representative.
Okay. All righty.
Thank you. I'll be short, brief. Paul Edgar, Friends of Kenema, resident of Kenema. First of all, I would like to say that I really like the design. I think it's complementary to the house next door. And height-wise and image-wise, it does not detract. The couple little concerned areas, one is the wall. Previous efforts have said that the wall should be 5, and you could set back a little stagger and put another retaining wall, small wall up, and that should not be a problem to resolve. The front posts on the porch should be
Go to the front.
neuralized where right now they're showing us just square posts. And that's a minor thing to make them look more appropriate in that design. And as far as the kind of vertical boards underneath the porch, I think that's a nice approach to doing it. And as they move around to some of the soils for the cut to put the garage in the back, adding a little bit there to reduce and align it to the driveway. I was there when they tore down the shed, and it was dangerous. I concur with what was said. Getting it out of there was the smartest thing that could be done, and it needed to be done, and I'm sure that all the apologies but it was done for public safety. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I will say the posts are very vernacular, because they're very plain. Anyway, okay, is there any rebuttal before I close the public hearing? Okay, then I will close the public hearing and leave it to the board to discuss.
Kelly, do you have a photo of the Davis house that would show what the front porch columns there look like? They look like they're square.
They've got looks like a little crown on the top, but they're very, very plain. Yeah, it's a pretty easy fix. Good call. Anybody else?
I
No.
think it
Ready
looks,
for comments?
yeah, we're ready.
Okay. My only thing would be, I don't see an issue with keeping the house where it's at. I think if it was to be pushed back, it would only take away from the proportion aesthetic of the layout of the site. And so anyway, that's all I gotta say. So, somebody wants to make a motion, I guess?
Oh, I got a couple of comments. So,
Well, I was asking for that.
okay, well, I was waiting for you to finish.
Oh,
for the
heck.
chair to finish.
Nah,
I think I agree with you on the siting of the house. You know, preferably it would be set farther back than the contributing home, but there's really not room for that on the site. And pushing it back so that they're more lined up, I think will just increase the comparison. And so I think I don't think pushing it back a couple of feet would really do much anyway. So I think I'm okay with the way it is. The one issue that I have is I think the garage structure is too tall. I think it should be straight up a story and a half. It looks like there are, it's using manufactured trusses, which is adding height without adding interior height. Maybe, I don't know, you can comment on that better than I can, but I think that could be brought down quite a bit.
is there is there different elevation, or besides that one? Yeah.
They used, in the narrative submission, they used the example of the house on 3rd Avenue. It's on page, if I find it here. Where'd that go? Right here.
Yeah.
Which is a similar sized house, and the garage is much more complimentary
Prove that.
by being a true 1.5 story, not this garage is almost a full 2-story.
The garage there was built to be compatible with
The other
a
house.
different design
Yeah.
for the house that burnt to the ground.
Yeah, and they kept it. So,
Yeah, they saved the garage, that's all they saved.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was existing, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, depends on the perspective you're looking at. The tallest part of this house is really facing the back of the house. Where the cars go in, it is very tall. It's a 812. It's fuzzy, but everything's fuzzy. So you're saying that could be a story and a half, that the pony walls could be brought down. Everything's vaulted, I believe, inside the
Yeah.
ADU.
On page 9, I think of the staff report, particularly on that elevation that shows both, it feels awkward to me.
Is there, is there a section of the garage,
This one?
section drawing?
Yes, I can get that up.
Seemed like there was one for the garage. Come on, there's gotta be, oh,
It's the very last page
last page.
of the,
There it is. All right. So it looks like, oh, thanks. Hallelujah. Oh, here we go. Garage upper level. 201.
7 feet?
Just give me a sec here. So 194.8. 6. It's about 7 feet. It could be brought down. It could be brought down a foot or so, foot and a half. I mean, you could bring it down. That's what you're saying. That wall could be brought down because there's scissor trusses inside.
right. I mean, I would, my preference would be to bring it down more than that. But,
That might be too low.
yeah.
So would you be talking about replacing the trusses with stick framing?
I mean, that's what I would do in this situation, but
I get all of that, other than the only comment would be is this is behind the house completely and it's on the uphill side where it's almost going to be tough to see short of driving up, I think. But I know what you're saying.
I mean,
It's taller, but it's also completely subjugated.
yeah, we do have, there's a proposed home right behind it as well.
Yeah,
And things, it's not, it won't be hidden from
right.
everyone, I guess. Is what
But mostly from the public right away,
yeah.
it'll be tough to see.
It is good that it's in the back and not right off the.
And that would be my only caveat is because if it was off to the side like the other one, the other example, and it was that tall and it would, where it'd be kind of towering, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
But I think because it's directly behind the house, it really does become secondary. So, but I get it. Anything else? Grant?
Just the retaining wall, I agree with the comments that it should be brought down to 5 feet preferably.
Yeah, it would have to be a cantilever engineered footing and wall, but I think it would be better to keep it lower, for sure. So we could definitely make that as a condition. All right.
Well, I want to take a shot at a motion here, since we seem to have said all that we want to say.
Yeah.
And that is to approve the design. Can you speak up? I'm fumbling for words here. I want to make a motion to approve the design as submitted, subject to the conditions of approval stated by staff, plus the additional condition that the retaining wall behind the garage be maintained at a height of 5 feet rather than going up to 7
Can I ask a question on that motion that
You may.
staff was recommending moving the house, but are we in agreement that we can leave the house on the site plan as proposed?
Yeah, that is part and parcel of my motion. As well as the garage height.
Yeah, I got you.
I'll second that.
That work?
So you'd add a condition to reduce the height of the retaining wall to 5 feet and add a condition to reduce the height of the garage?
No,
No,
no, not
Okay.
that one.
not that one.
Just the 5-foot retaining wall.
Okay, and so, and remove condition number 3 that says the house setback should increase along with the height decreasing?
Yeah, get rid of that.
Yes.
You can get rid of 5. Right?
We didn't talk about 5, but I will amend the motion to delete condition of approval number 5 as well.
Can I get a clarification regarding condition 6?
It's fine.
Would the board like to limit the use of composite decking to just the decking and not the stairs? Or just leave that open?
I'm content to leave it so that it matches all the way down.
There you go.
Okay. And then right now the condition is for 1 new tree. You'd keep it that way.
With the hopes that they'll plant more on their own. But yeah, keep it.
I mean, there is, so this is planted in the side or rear yard. I'll just add to the discussion about the garage that, requiring a tree somewhere in this area in the side yard might help
Oh, yeah.
shield the massing of the garage.
Yeah.
So we could condition another tree in that location or make the condition that the 1 tree required should be planted right there.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll just clarify the location of that.
Somebody want to second that?
I did.
Oh, got you.
You did? Okay, thanks. All right, Board Member Blythe,
Yay.
Board Member Stobie,
Yay.
Board Member Basinger,
Aye.
and Chair McLaughlin.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, our next item is PC 19-096, continuance GLUA 19-29, and the HR 19-4, historic review for new construction in the Kenema National Register District at 306 4th Avenue. Do we need to talk about that, or do we just,
We do have a public comment, so
Oh.
I would recommend, you don't have to go through the whole spiel again. You can open the hearing, take the public comment, and then
Close it.
Make a motion to continue. You don't have to close it, but you can continue
okay,
until a date certain of October 22nd.
okay, so I can officially open the meeting, public hearing back up. And it's for Paul Edgar. What can do you have a lot to do, Paul? Or should I limit your time?
I am again with Fort Kennedy, or not Fort Kennedy, excuse me.
No,
That's my
Friends.
nonprofit. With Friends of Kenema.
Okay,
Again, I would There are no bungalow houses around this property that are contributing structures, and none of the bulk and size that is being proposed. There are no Kenema bungalows that even come close to this bulk and size. So this is probably twice the size of any bungalow in Kenema of historic nature. So there may be something, we should get a list of them if, and I would like to have that as part of the continuance on this hearing, is to bring back so we can actually take a look, have a picture of every bungalow in Kenema and take a look at how they compare in bulk and size. I think that's an appropriate way to validate the statement that I'm making about it being inappropriate.
So you're willing to do that?
I will, yeah, I could do that if, with the help of our esteemed Kelly here, we'll identify them and make sure that we're talking, everything is correct. A house, this house with a garage underneath it in a bungalow becomes basically a 3-story house by all appearances, and there's not any way to mask it. The bungalows in Kenema have all been really 1-story and not even had a loft or attic use. Maybe there is 1 or 2, I'll find out. We'll find out and have that available at the next meeting. What is important here is that this height is really great, too great. And then I'd like to go back to the building guidelines that are part of what states what is allowable and not allowable. And well, I'm trying to find the one that I want to find. By the way, this naming, we used to own the property, and right in the area where the driveway comes up, it was a landslide. And so this house has geologic hazards associated with it that are within 100 feet of the landslide. Let me get 2 words. In building placement on, I don't remember what page it is, and they get into building placement that is uncharacteristic to the block or the neighborhood, and this is to where it destroys the symmetry of even of the Kenema neighborhood. And this house in this location, my house is vernacular, the house across the street is vernacular, the house right up the street is vernacular, and the house below it is a vernacular. And that are contributing structures, and you can only compare them to contributing structures. Not allowed in building size says that a residential building that is more than 20% from the height of the historic neighborhood context buildings unless approved by the HRB. This is one of those things saying it well exceeds that because of the garage underneath. The residential building ground levels that are elevated less than 18 inches above ground are not allowed unless they are topology considerations. Kenema residential greater than 1.5 stories in height plus a basement, but this case the basement is all exposed.
Give you a couple more seconds.
And just in bulk and mass of the structures, buildings that are out of scale to the context and the use, and that's one of the critical issues of choosing, in this case, a bungalow design.
Uh,
All right, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to call for a motion.
To continue
To
to October
continue.
22nd.
So moved.
Okay.
Do we need to second that? Or was it my,
Second.
okay, there you go.
Okay, Board Member Stobie?
Yeah.
Board Member Blythe?
Yay.
Board Member Basinger?
Aye.
And Chair McLaughlin?
Aye. Why am I not getting? Hold on a sec. Oh, yeah, I got it. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, Preservation Grant 19-25, PG 1905, Preservation Grant for siding, roof, and trim repairs at 115 Madison Street, the Annie Bush House.
Okay. We have our fourth grant application this cycle. The request is $4,000. The project includes roof repair. There's fire damage, so there's some of the structural work involved of a 12 by 16 area of the roof, roof replacement, gutter replacement, siding and trim repair, and then repainting of the areas that were repaired along with the entire house. So some of these items are not typically awarded as preservation grants. So, you know, a re-roof and repainting is considered
It's maintenance.
typical maintenance that every homeowner has to do, and so the board typically does not award grants for that work. However, the repairs kind of add up to more than $2,000, and so staff's thinking is that while not the full $22,000 would really be counted as match, enough of this work is could qualify as grant projects that you know, we can recommend overall still awarding a grant.
What's the, where you're seeing is $2,000?
So the siding and trim repair along with the structural roof repair.
I don't know that grant money could be given to structural.
It's really up to the board. So it's
Yeah.
up to you all what you want to kind of categorize as what's appropriate.
I don't look at the maintenance issues or structural as part of a grant request. That's how I look at it. But
As far as the fire damage, one would hope they had insurance to cover that.
it's been that way for a while.
Oh,
I mean, you could tell that there was a fire damage, and then they put the OSB on the roof.
Oh,
They
I
bridged
see.
it, put a new roof on.
I
it's
like
been
the
that way.
straps on the
Yeah.
split.
Plumber's tape
Rafters,
is what
yeah.
that is. Yeah.
So the applicant's here and might be able to explain more about some of the repair work and if any of the painting work is related to that in some way. I wasn't able to really break the costs down anymore, but maybe the applicant can.
Sure. If you want to come up. You state your name and where you live.
Good evening, I'm Wendy Marshall, and I live at 115 Madison Street, and I appreciate you guys considering this. So I agree, some of the routine maintenance, like painting and roof, is typical. On the Historic Preservation Grant Program application, it does state that historic buildings desiring to make exterior rehabilitation or renovation improvements, structural improvements to preserve the integrity of the structure may also qualify. So that's why I submitted this. The things that are above and beyond, like Kelly mentioned, there was a fire sometime in the past. You saw how they repaired it.
Yeah.
So I am I want to fix that before there is actually a problem. And that is on the front part of the house. I don't know if you have an overall, but it's to the right, on the right-hand picture. It's over the very front, on the right, above the porch. Yeah, that piece.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and then another thing that's not typical, so the whole house has got original channel drop siding, but that piece that's circled in black, that is some LP siding or something, and they're gonna replace that with channel drop, similar in appearance or as close as they can get, so that'll match the rest of the house. And the other one is in the left-hand photo. So they apparently had a door there, and when they put a slider on the back, actually that was on the inventory, so it was at least 2002. They slapped that siding right over it. They didn't align it horizontally, or they didn't set it in the hole. And that's gonna take a little bit more. We actually took off one of the boards to see what was under there, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of work to get the boards to set in, and that will smooth that out. On the front, I don't think I have it circled. I don't know if you have all the photos up there. Maybe, I'm not sure if I submitted it, but on the, if you go right there, in the middle, the water table on the bottom, that has been broken off, and that's another thing that'll be replaced. And just taking all the details like that and getting them back to where this little house can.
But you've got the heat pump line set right there,
Right.
and you're.
It was broken off before that was put there.
Gotcha.
And that part will be painted to match the house, the siding. And there's another one you can see by the window. They just, some of the windows were smaller than original, and you can see the work they did. They left a lot of the siding broken, and I'm going to get that fixed.
Let's see, you've got different siding throughout the house, it looks like. That one picture with the 3 black circles, that sidewall is a different,
Right, and that's, that.
it's all period. There's a corner here that looked like it was a porch or something, because there's a vertical line on the left black circle. That something happened there, that they put a vertical piece of wood or something to, and then they filled
Yeah, and I couldn't tell what that was, and,
evolution of the house.
yeah, there are, I think, at least 4 or 5 different sections of the house.
Yeah.
But yeah, that siding that's on the top floor on the front facing, that's the part that's really inconsistent with the channel drop, and we're gonna replace that.
Got it. Does anybody have any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now that I see what we're looking at here with the plumber's tape on the rafters, I'm inclined to agree that that definitely qualifies under structural necessity.
Yeah, it's interesting that that fire occurred. There's skip sheeting on one side, and it probably burned through the roof, and then they just put the OSB on and put a roof on it. That it may not have been an insurance thing. I mean, they may not have had it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
So they're
doubting
asking.
that was done by a professional builder.
No. No. Looks like an open junction box right there. So they're asking for $1,000. She's asking for $1,000. That is too.
It's an ambitious project, the end result, I hope, will justify all the work.
Yeah, this thing's chock full of lead, that's for sure. Okay, somebody want to make a motion on
It's your turn.
Okay.
this grant?
I move to approve a grant of $1,000 for application 19525 PG 1905 at 115 Madison Street.
Is there a second? Ah, there you go. All right.
All right, Board Member Basinger,
Aye.
Board Member Stobie.
Aye.
Board Member Blythe,
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
Aye.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Next item is 19095, letter of support for a technical assistance grant to update the comprehensive plan. Did everybody read that letter?
I have a hard copy here, if you're all willing to sign it. You signed a similar letter a couple of months, or several months ago, for a different grant for the same project. So we're applying for 2 grants to combine the funding to update our comprehensive plan. So this is for the second grant, and we're applying for about $100,000 from the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And we're looking for letters of support from all of our boards and commissions.
Groovy.
I don't think you need a motion.
No, we just need to sign the thing. Okay, so we can all sign that on our way out. Anything else? Communications, anything like that?
I don't think I have anything for you.
Okay, then we can adjourn. So everybody